Hello, everybody. It's morning here in Guam. I forget what day it is. It's Friday morning here in Guam, January 14th. So whenever you watch this, whether it's sooner or later, I hope you're having a great day or a great evening. It's been a long time since I have done one of these videos, and I know in my last video I said I would touch on the subject and continue on the subject of debt, and that is what we're going to do. So this is part two, a long delayed continuation, a very fast review of the previous video, which you can really just go back and watch for yourself. The dangers or the risks of debt, taken from Proverbs 22, verse 7, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And again, it's not right or wrong. It's not a commandment saying thou shalt not get into debt. It's just a statement of fact. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. They're just statements of fact. Debt has emotional and physical bondage and danger that it brings with it. So I think I've been able to establish from those verses that there is danger and risk involved with debt. We also looked at 1 Kings and chapter 6, verses 1 through 5, and the account of the floating axe head, or the man who lost his borrowed axe head, and it was brought back to him in the emotional turmoil that he experienced because he lost something that was borrowed and he couldn't pay it back. So is debt good or is debt bad? Today we're going to look in 2 Kings chapter 4, and it's going to be another account of debt, and we'll see what you think of this. So this is just from the Bible, 2 Kings chapter 4, and the account is verses 1 through 7. Verse 1 of 2 Kings chapter 4 reads, Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. So this account opens up immediately with the establishment of we have a woman in debt. She's a widow, she has 2 children, and she cannot pay this debt. She is in bondage to the creditor, to the person to whom she owes this money, whether it was she who owes it or her husband that owed it. The payment is due. Her family were the borrowers, and they are now servants to the lender. And so that carries with it the physical bondage. And think also of the emotional bondage she must be experiencing, the emotional burden, knowing that the creditor is going to come and take her sons and make them bondservants, in essence slaves, to work off the debt that he is owed by her and her family. And so she goes to Elisha, and she tells Elisha what is happening. She's in debt, and she can't pay this debt. And so Elijah once again comes to the rescue and says, well, what do you have? What shall I do for thee? In verse 2, tell me what thou hast in the house. And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house, save a pot of oil. In verse 3, Elisha said, Go, borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. And it goes on and gives the rest of the account of the story. And in verse 7 it says that she came and told the man of God, and she's filled the oil into all the different empty vessels she brought from her neighbors. And in verse 7 she comes and tells Elijah that all the pots, they're all full. And Elijah says, Go, sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. So it starts off with an account of a debtor, someone who is servant to a lender because they cannot pay the debt. There is danger, there is risk, there's emotional and physical turmoil and bondage. And so what advice does Elisha give her? Go get in more debt. Does that surprise anybody? His answer to getting out of debt is to go further in debt. Notice that he tells her, go and borrow from thy neighbors. He doesn't say, well, get an extra job, work 2 or 3 jobs, work extra hours, and see what you can do. No, he says, go and borrow. So does this take away from the principle we've already established from Proverbs that the borrower is servant to the lender? No, it does not. Not only is she servant to the lender, to the creditor that was mentioned in verse 1, but now she is borrowing and a servant to all of her neighbors because she's borrowing something from them. So how do we use this principle of debt? This is the principle of leverage. It is possible to leverage debt to profit from it. But first, I want you to notice that she had to find her resources. Elisha says, what do you have available to you right now? And she says, I have a pot of oil. Elisha didn't say, well, go out and spend X amount of money to learn a new skill to get out of debt. I mean, that might be a possibility. But he says, first, what do you have in your surrounding area? What do you have available to you? So in order for you to get out of debt, find what resources you have available to you. Maybe you can have a garage sale, a yard sale. Maybe you have a skill. Maybe you can just mow the lawn for somebody else. Maybe you're good at sewing or crafts. But find what skill you have available to you, what resources are immediately in your area that you can use. But the other thing he told her, when he told her to borrow, the resources were already possessed by her neighbors, and it wasn't a burden on them. They were empty vessels. So she wasn't going to her neighbors and asking them, hey, I need money. She came to them and says, can I have an empty vessel? Can I have something that you're not using? Can I borrow something that is not of use to you currently? And they let her borrow it. So she was still borrowing it. The borrower, was still servant to the lender, but she came in debt of her neighbors. So she asked those in her immediate vicinity. So she didn't go to the bank. She didn't go to more creditors. She went to her neighbors, to her close friends, to her family first, and said, can I borrow something that you are not using in order to help me advance my current resource to get out of debt? And the culmination of labor and leverage in verse 7, sell the oil and pay the debt and live off the rest. Elisha didn't say, okay, keep getting into more debt, keep borrowing and keep avoiding the taxes. He says, get out of debt. He's just, the purpose of her getting that oil and filling more pots was to get out of debt completely. And so I think this principle just ties back into Proverbs of the borrower servant to the lender. Wouldn't you not want to get out of the bondage? Debt can be leveraged to get out or to advance a skill that you have. You might use the example of a business loan. Well, what are you going to use that business loan for? What skill do you possess that you're going to advance it? But before you just go out and get a business loan, before you go out and borrow things from neighbors or friends or family, I want you to realize that first she sought counsel. She did not just randomly go out and decide to do this on her own. She first sought counsel. And so I would advise you, if you are trying to get out of debt and you're thinking, well, I could try to get into more debt to get out of my first debt, first you better think and pray about that and seek godly counsel. Second, it was directed and blessed by God. So this was Elisha, God speaking through Elisha to her saying, here's what you need to do. So if you are thinking of using debt as leverage, whether to get out of current debt or even if you're debt free and you're thinking of going into debt to leverage resources to make more money, to make a better living, to advance the resources that you have and add to them, whatever reason you are thinking or considering going into debt, first get godly counsel. And second, make sure it is of God. You need to pray about it. You need to have peace about it. You need to make sure that he is either leading you to do that or he's giving you permission to do that. And I think those are very important principles to remember, because when you borrow, you will be the servant to whomever lent it to you, whether that be friend or family member, or whether that be financial institution. Borrower servant to the lender, and the rich rules over the poor. Debt has risks, debt has dangers, but debt can also be used to leverage something that you possess, a skill. It can be used to borrow from people that it will not hurt. You're not going to borrow money from people that can't afford to pay it to you, and you're going to pay off that debt. Okay, that's the ultimate goal, is to still get out of debt and to be able to live off of what you have left. I hope that is a good summary of this principle and of these passages. Please let me know if you have any questions or any discussions. And let me know if there's any topic you would like me to discuss further, whether it's regarding finances. This might be the last one regarding in this finance series, or if there's another topic or subject in the Bible or a passage or character. What do you want from Brief Bits from the Bible? I'll see you guys later. Thank you.